Williams' influence on students was so profound. You know, if you were in one of her classes and you didn't show up, she would go get you. Not only would she go get you, she would give you a sermon and tell you how wrong you were all the way back to class. That was Norma Williams.
I've heard people talk about someone keeping you on track for what you want to do. Ms. Williams actually put me on track to do what I want to do. And then she helped keep me on track.
Mr. Williams' role here at Tougaloo has impacted me greatly. Not only me, but many others across the country and even the world. You see, Title IX is an educational amendment that was put in place in 1972 that prohibited any sexual discrimination for any educational program or activity receiving any federal assistance. Ms. Williams was a pioneer in that particular movement. Not only was she the first African American director of athletics in the state of Mississippi, but she was also the first director of athletics here at Tougaloo College, first female athletic director here at Tougaloo College. So she's a trailblazer. She has really affected me greatly, and I will add that she was also my teacher at some point here at Tougaloo.
Norma always talked about, she would not always, well, occasionally she would mention some of her students. One of her students that name that would come up on occasion was Joe Davis, and I'm sure you'll be talking to him. Joe was interested in going in an area that very few African Americans was going into. And I do believe that Joe and Miss Williams had a number of conversations about that. If I'm wrong, he'll tell you that when you interview him. But she was always pushing students, pushing them beyond what they thought was their capacity.
When I came to Tougaloo, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Had some background out of high school, working as a student athletic trainer or as a manager, and wasn't really sure how that would lead to a career. At that time, I didn't even know it could be a career. But through research and working with Ms. Williams and other people, kind of found out some things that, hey, this is something you actually interested in. You're kind of good at it because I had the high school background experience. You can, reach out to other people that do this and lead to that. And that's where I'll say Ms. Williams really became a serious influence for me.
So my grandmother was in fact strict at home as well. Grandma, don't talk about me later, okay? But you were. But if you were not that way, no telling where I would be right now. You actually set a guideline and you stuck by that guideline and those principles. And that's everything in the world. You gotta have that. As you see today, there are a lot of misguided people. And I feel like you directed me in that correct path because now I pour into others the same way you poured into me, the same way you poured into your students. I have done a lot of things and taken a lot of your roles. The strictness, some may see it as strict, but it was our culture. I really believe that's how we grew up, but that's what made us who we are today.
When I first came to Tougaloo, there were girls who had never played, never performed in a physical education class. If they were on the rangettes, they played volleyball, or if they played tennis, they didn't have to take physical education. Well, now you have them playing the sports, and there are a lot of people who can play the sport. So there are times when we have to sort of dismiss, or we have to have a certain number of people that are able to play the sport. And then after you play the sport, you got to get the equipment, you got to get the clothing, you have to get all of this. And it's very, very important. I would hope that all of the people realize some of the things that athletics do. They make a kid smarter. And I say smarter, you know that the kid has to have a certain average in order to play. But as he gets ready for that average, he learns how to write, he learns how to read. He's doing all of the things that will help him to raise his average up. The athlete is also physically fit. He can perform in a 40-minute game. So he's physically fit. Now, these athletes have friends, and these friends are influenced by these athletes. So in some cases, let's just go back to phys ed. In some cases, where you have a physical education major who is also a basketball player, and you allow that major, because he can play bounce a basketball, then you allow him to take a part of your class and be a part of your class. So his friends will learn what he's doing, and then they can understand why he has to be physically fit. And physically fit not only help the basketball team, it helped those kids in my class too.
She would not let you slide by. Case in point, when my daughter was in one of her walking classes, and I think it was physical activities, walking happened to have been the activity they were in. Medusa wanted to walk, couldn't, but she wanted to, period. And Ms. Williams told her, you do what you can, but don't do too much. She understood that Medusa was going through a time, and that too much physical activity would not be good for her, because she was still, as I said earlier, doing radiation and chemo and classes and getting the work done and so forth. Ms. Williams influenced our daughter to the point where she thought she could not only succeed, but she did succeed. To the point that after she graduated, she was inspired to go into Jackson State to do a master's degree in public health. Who would have thought? All goes back to Norma Williams, who became her advisor during her senior thesis. Here's a student who's trying to put a paper together, who has some limitations because of his surgery. But Ms. Williams would not let that limitation stand in the way of her achieving her goal, finishing that senior thesis paper, and she did.
Some of the things that come to mind when I think about Professor Williams as my instructor here at Tougaloo many years ago. We won't say how many. But she was stern. No nonsense. We are phrasing her legacy from the classroom to the court. She made sure that you understood that you were here for classwork first. She didn't, there was no questions about it. You were gonna get your lesson. You did get your lesson. You couldn't be in Ms. Williams' class. As a matter of fact, I distinctly remember a couple of my classmates being late for class, and she told them, well, you may as well go back to wherever you were, because you're late. And we don't start this class late. You need to be on time, and you need to be prepared and ready to work. So as a freshman, a very early age in my life, I saw this woman who was just very dominant and in her classroom, and she did not take anything less than perfection.
Ms. Williams had class rules in terms of attendance, behavior, even dress in her class, that coming to college, I didn't think I would see any more of that once I left high school. Because what I was told, you go to college, professors don't care. They got theirs, you got to get yours, you paying them, they're going to get their check anyway. Or was I wrong when I met Miss Williams? Or was that information wrong that was given to me, Miss Williams? And I am ever so grateful for her being who and what she was. Chap talked about if you didn't show up to class, she would either come looking for you. In my case, she didn't come looking for me. She would call the dorm and or would call security and would have them find you and have you come to class. You know, as I said earlier, the flip side of that, if you were late for class, she would lock the door and wouldn't let you in. You know, me being the fun, jovial kind of guy that I was trying to be, I say, Miss Williams, you have me confused. You know, if I'm late for class, you don't let me in. If I don't come, you send for me. I don't know what you want to do. She looks me straight in the eyes, and she always referred to everybody as Mr. and Mrs. She said, Mr. Davis, I'm preparing you for what's going to happen in your life outside of these gates. What you don't understand is I'm doing some things for you that your bosses and or your employment places aren't going to do. If you're late for work, they're going to dock your check. Your money going to be short. If you don't show up, son, you're not going to be paid. You know, those things didn't mean very much to me then, but later on in life, kind of like things your parents tell you that don't make sense or other people tell you, all of a sudden you're in a situation where that light or that bell goes ding, and there you are. You know, I talked about classroom discipline and or dress code. You weren't gonna come to her class any kind of way. See, I wore caps a lot. I probably don't wear caps now because of Miss Williams, because you know she would put me out of class. One day I refused to leave class. I said, I'm not leaving. I'm paying my tuition. I'm here to learn. I'm here to get my class. She said, yeah, but I had rules. I wouldn't leave. She moved the class to another classroom and wouldn't let me in.
When women weren't allowed to play, then and men were, that meant that there was no place for women, not even in teaching the women to play. But after Title IX was mandated, that meant that we had to include women. Now, if you were talking about how do you support women, you have to understand one thing. Women have to have scholarships. Women need to have a place to stay. Women do need to have a good coach. Women need to have a good equipment. You say, why have an athletic program? It is very important that you have an athletic program. And yes, there should be women in that program. Number one, when they lose or win a game, they have to learn how to cope. They have to learn that I lost and why did I lose? And I won and why did I win? And on the next game, which isn't too far away, you have to play another game. And you have to win or lose that game. And you have to make that decision.
Her influence on students, a lot of students who've gone on to earn graduate degrees, part of their story is, if they graduated from Tougaloo in the Department of Education, part of their story is going to be about Miss Norma Williams that helped them get to that point to achieve what they were able to accomplish.
I'm so appreciative to her for things that were done. Also, now I am really appreciative to Tougaloo College for putting this event together for Miss Williams. I'm partial, of course, because of my relationship with Miss Williams. But, for the 45 plus years, from a student when I came here in the summer of 1977 to I graduated in 1982, and all the years that I've stayed in contact with Tougaloo during the time that I've been away, I don't think there have been, not very many, but not many people what I would say are iconic figures on this campus.
The progress that Professor Norma Williams has made for women in sports is second to none. all of the young ladies who played ball at Tougaloo, a ball in my hand is just a ball, but a ball in their hand was their way up, their way out. And Norma offered them that opportunity. So today we continue the legacy with our women's sports in basketball and volleyball and cross country, in soccer, in cheer and dance. We continue the legacy by offering the programs that support athletics. We talk to our faculty staff all the time to say Tougaloo has 2 A's, athletics and academics. And Norma was a part of both, from the court to the classroom. We continue that legacy today, and we're excited to celebrate her tonight for her legacy.
When I was in high school, I had a high school coach named Coach Henson. And for some reason, he would place a lot of emphasis on female athletics because he came in and coached females. There was another coach with the guys. But all of the things that he did, I could remember. And I made up my mind at that particular time that I was going to be a physical education teacher. Now, I didn't think about being an athletic director. I just thought about being a physical education teacher and maybe teaching kids to play basketball. But at that time, at the time that I came to Tougaloo, there was no basketball for women. So I didn't have a chance to play. And when I took a job at Tougaloo College, there was no basketball for women. But as time passed by, then Title IX came in. And right before Title IX came in, the athletic director at that particular time decided that we would have our women's basketball team.
I think of the significance of Title IX. I think for women, Title IX not only opened the door for sports, but it opened the door for leadership. Some women who were marginalized, not recognized for their sporting ability, once Title IX came into being, were able to really rise and continue the fight so that women today can be recognized as icons. And so Norma was in that fight and talked to her students about how important it was for women to be recognized in sports, therefore being leaders. And so we want to continue that legacy. We want students to understand that they have to be advocates for women as leaders. They have to be advocates for young men to stand up and support women in leadership roles, and to see the importance of women in sports and how that translates into the world of work with team building and leadership and guidance and making sure that others are respected for their gift and their talents. And so this is an exciting time for us 50 years later with Title IX to celebrate Norma. What a way to celebrate with the life of Norma Williams.